keep doing your assignments, paying attention. Good luck to everyone. And now let's have Professor Cardenas here. So go ahead, please.
All righty. Things got kind of complicated this morning, huh? All right.
Yes,
No, that's okay. Don't worry. Generally, Fridays are, difficult day of the week.
right.
Everybody's so tired and all of that. But today is good news, let me say. Since we're going to have a break for a full week, that means you won't have to, get up so early. You're going to have additional time to read the material and, well, do other errands that you probably do when you're free, right? When we are all free. Very good. Okay, I'm going to touch base with you on once more on what is in classroom. Okay, what I left in classroom pending is for you is that category under comparative linguistics, out of which I'm giving you there two extra uh, paragraphs for you to do. Go ahead and do your analysis. I don't think I'm gonna have the time to really go that far into breaking down the parallel structures. So I recommend you to read the rest of chapter one. I did my best to cover most of chapter one from Vasquez Ayura's book on it course in translation. So you go ahead and perform the rest of it with the two paragraphs we gave you for practice. Over there you have along with Vasquez Ayura's book that you can download that you are required to read only chapter one, which is the introduction for treatment of text treatment or text analysis. I'm asking also you guys to go ahead and take those two paragraphs, one in English and another one in Spanish. Go ahead and break down the sentences out of which, not necessarily the sentences, but the text in the segments that are meaningful to make a comparison between the number of segments that you discovered in your versions. You're going to create an English version if your original is in Spanish. You will create a Spanish version if your original is in English. Then you will contrast how many segments you had in both. You will focus on provide some commentary. Listen to the word I'm using, commentary. That's a rundown of how that went. If you had any difficult term or difficult segment that you did not find equivalence for, then as you proceed and comment on that, then you go ahead and in your Microsoft Word, in your machine, your computer, your laptop, you will go ahead and create parallel structures, right? One alongside the other as Vasquez Ayora proposes it in chapter one, which is the introduction. That's what we are left pending. That I'm gonna be asking for that assignment, but there is no open. I mean, I'm leaving it open. I'm not giving you any deadline or due date for that one. So whenever you're ready next week, you could very easily go ahead and turn it in. If Google Classroom is not enabled for you to receive it, for you to send it over, which I think I did already, it would also be possible for you to send it to my personal email. I have a Gmail account. It's in Classroom. You can also forward your work over there, and I'll be very happy to receive it that way as well. So I hope we're on the same page concerning this. The other thing that is in Classroom that deserves our attention is finishing the writing of the reaction paper. Okay, there are some I was checking, and there's some 7 people who haven't sent that. Go ahead and do so before the 9th. Today's the 6th. There are 3 more days, and then it's going to be closing again because that's summative, and that's the policy. Summative work is generally provided a deadline and due dates, not so much for formative work as we evaluate what people are performing or doing. Not that they won't count, of course, everything counts, but they'll count differently in the for assessment purposes. We'll probably have a second summative second summative assessment occurring in week 3, and we're going to end with a final assignment that's on our very last week in the month of August. So that's, I think, what's going to be occurring concerning assessment, right? So I haven't posted any other books, but I'm planning to do so. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to provide some very good resources I think are worth the time. Uh, Not that Vasquez Sayuras is not enough. I think that one is long and complete enough for you to learn or relearn what a good translator should know concerning the use of English, Spanish, Spanish, English translation interpretation, right? So it's that's the way it goes pretty much. Well, in general, I don't keep track of your attendance. Attendance being processed through the systems. So as they have been suggesting, you do not leave any of your attendance signing or form completion. Do not, overlook that, because that absolutely, I'm sure it's going to be important for the sake of what's going to happen, because I have to go to the ongoing continuing education office and ask for a rundown or some report based on how attendance is working. They're going to give it to me. I'm talking about Miss Caballero at the continuing office, continuing education office. I'm going to show up over there next week and ask for that, see who's attending, who's not attending, and all of that. Now, this is very good as a program. Let me tell you, when I came up with the idea for creating something like this, I think, this was a wonderful way for you to obtain 8 points, because that's the assessment. The university scheme for formation states that as long as you are taking a program that's 160 hours, and because this is not only our face-to-face classes, we also have out of session work that also counts in your favor. This is going to be worth, according to the university scheme, in terms of formation and continuing education for professionals, up to 8 points, which are, I would say, it's wonderful. The only other way you can get 8 points in the university, just like that, like for one shot, that's like publishing an article in an indexed and specialized journal. Okay, if you accomplish that, then you get your 8 points straight, like no doubt. And this is equivalent to that. It's pretty good, pretty good. It's an excellent beginning of the year in case you decide to ever participate in what we call a banco de datos. It's like recruitment for future faculty participation, on your behalf, right? So this is very beneficial, I'd say. I am sure the dean came at the beginning of the very first week in order to congratulate you, okay, for this, making the decision of taking this. Now, the beauty of all of this doesn't work, the magic doesn't work if you don't complete the program. So if you already attended 2 weeks and something comes up, make sure you don't miss the rest of this, because you're going to be losing then 8 points, and that's going to be like a waste of your money and your time. So I strongly suggest you to complete the rest of it and to keep yourselves, as we know, accountable and in attendance, right? Accountable and in attendance. In attendance is easy because it's just from 8 to 12. That's the easy part. Now, accountable is submitting all the work that is coming up, right? Because I still have to, provide some more material for us to discuss and cover. So, well, today is a Friday. Wonderful, wonderful. This is beautiful. We just reached the end of the week. I hope you will have an excellent weekend and you will rest, because this is what we need to do. Try to rest also. It's not always an easy thing because we're committed to do work, and regardless of the situation, it's always a good thing to come to some safe haven, like this parenthesis period in which you will do what you want, not necessarily what other people will request you to do, right? So, am I sharing screen fine?
It is.
Professor, yes.
All right, thank you. Very good. Now we're going to resume our presentation where we stopped yesterday, Thursday, and you know, in order to come to terms with this strange period, so to speak, of the European Spanish Empire. It was an European superpower during that period of 150 to 200 years. The influence of the church, I think, was pretty negative, really, because what they did is that they weakened the position of the crown, and I think it was partly because many of the encomenderos and many of the other appointees, these people were like ex-military. They were military in the past. And military people have very good things, but one of the ugly things that they like killing people. Okay. They get used to that. So the reason why I think there was also a genocide here occurring is that the monarchy in the lower end, at the lower end, I mean, not the monarchy itself, the head of the monarchy, but I mean, the other positions underneath, they were all ex-military, since they were involved in the expelling of the Arabs and defending Spain for such a long time, because defeating the Arabs wasn't an easy feat. They had a 500 year war approximately, and you can find, you can attest to what it was like. It was pretty ugly because it was a civilization that was established, right? You have the Mamelucos. They were the Arab kingdom that lived in most of southern Spain, different regions of Spain in the south, and even up to the north. So they had to reconquest their peninsula, and they were fighting from the north all the way up to the bottom of the peninsula, same as with the Portuguese. So that created the need for, military personnel to go into America, because they were the ones who had more experience. But the problem with military is that they kill people, and they got used to killing. And this is the reality with empires. Empires are built on violence most of the time. So that's how an empire comes to be. They kill their enemies, or they kill any opposition. That's what they do. They don't know how to deal with population any other way. So, and since there were so many killings, I think the church did the same. I think it was the church doing the same, and the ex-military in among the civilian authorities, they were also ex-military, and I'm sure many of these priests were ex-military too. So they were, killing people that got in their way. That was the situation. Ultimately, they paid a price for all of this, and there was a very negative reputation, loss of influence, rejection by the people. Later on, they try to wash their face, of course, through some important friars' work, or priests who would devote themselves to helping the Indians or trying to educate them, but it was too late. That was too little and too late that it came to be, and I think most of the damage was already in place, as they committed a genocide of over, what, I don't know, maybe like 5 million people were murdered during the conquest. They many of them died because of disease, but a lot of them were murdered. They were murdered. burned, tortured, killed. It was war, all-out war in America. The conquest of these two major empires, Incas in South America and Aztecs in North America, that was an ugly, ugly story. So, bloodshed, right? So, in the short period of time, let me just go back a bit so that we know exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about a Mr. or priest Bartolomé de las Casas work, a short account of the destruction of the Indies, which we were talking about yesterday. Through this book, he denounced a lot of the abuse occurring, but this was also raw material for Northern Europeans of the competing kingdoms for, influencing Europe in order to discredit the Spanish people and the Spanish crown, and also, to some extent, use the church also against them. And they were accusing them and informing the papacy that they were committing all kinds of abuses against the civilians, the indigenous and others. So this work by Bartolomé de las Casas was translated into Latin, English, French, and Dutch, German as well. So here's an excerpt. Property duly displayed in its bloody colors, or faithful narrative of the horrid and unexampled massacres, butcheries, and all manner of cruelties that hell and malice could invent, committed by the popish Spanish party on the inhabitants of West India, composed first in Spanish by Bartolomé de las Casas, a bishop there and an eyewitness of most of these barbarous cruelties, afterwards translated by him into Latin, and then by other hands into modern English. So here we have like an excerpt of what it was like that jumps to the eye, as it jumps to the eye. Okay, I need to mention another important piece of work that if if you're curious to check it out, that'll be an interesting piece of literature to pay attention to. An example of a more subtle but deliberate mistranslation into English, so to serve the black legend, was Pedro Ciesas de León's Crónica del Perú, correct, published in 1553. So Ciesas de León was an impartial and respected chronicler whose work does not have the polemic quality of that of Bartolomé de las Casas. Indeed, his book provides the student with very detailed accounts of the Incas at the time of the conquest. The book was translated into English by John Stevens in 1709 and again by Clemens Markham in the 19th century. So as you see, they kept this alive. They kept these stories alive, you see? And they did not want to let it go, okay? They did not want to let this black legend go because it was a way to weaken the Spanish position and to accuse them of immoralities of all kinds of sorts. And now this is the way politics works. It works this way. It's an ugly business. I don't know if you have any comment, concerning this. Now, here is the book I'm talking about. It's an old one. I think it's still available. You can purchase it through Amazon or obtain this anywhere where you think you can buy historical books. It's an interesting piece of material that was translated back in the day, and it is still out there as witness, of this terrible events that occurred, which were, built on fact partly, but also on political ill will against the crown. I don't know. Probably you do have a comment. I started talking about this. I'm about to end speaking about this. So before I let this topic go and move into something else, probably you do have a comment. So are you aware that the very first university that existed in the Isthmus was a Catholic university, right? Way before USMA, the Jesuits they established a, a university, but that did not come to fruition, and then it was closed. That was the very first antecedent of an attempt of creating a higher education institution in Panama. In other countries, it, Catholic universities are much older than ours here, such as USMA. USMA is it's a fairly recent creation, just like Universidad de Panama. But the very first university in this country appeared mid 20th century. But I think this all the Catholic universities, I think they appeared 17th and 18th century. So in our country, there wasn't much success in this idea of educating the population, of providing people with proper education, formal education at a higher level for them to read more and know more. So I also blame, to some extent, to the church for this, because they could have continued forming people, or establishing some, I hope, translation departments or schools. They had the the scholars to establish universities here, and they decided not to for a long time. So I wonder why that was. I wonder why. Okay. So this latter translation has been strongly criticized for its distortions, which support the Black legend. In the commentary from these sources established that there were omissions and mistranslations that are not obvious to the reader unless a close comparison with the original is made, especially the one by Markham. He consistently omitted passages that portray the Indians in bad light, such as describing their sexual perversions and their cannibalistic practices. This is also true, and part of why only military or ex-military could deal with what was happening in the Americas back then is because of Indians' behavior that was also pretty wild. And also here, there are accusations of them, insisting that Indians committed suicide, and there were changes in stories, in order to accuse the Spaniards, the crown and their authorities in America. Right. So there are several very good movies that I strongly recommend concerning this topic. One of them is 1492. That's the name of the movie, 1492. The other one is Apocalypto by Mel Gibson. Strongly recommended. Another excellent movie on this is I would say probably is can't remember exactly what the name is, but it's about Jesuit missionaries in South America also. When the name comes back to my mind, I'm going to tell you about it. But I'm going to recommend these three films because I think it's a good thing that we keep this topic alive and we compare different perspectives on what this story was because when you study history, they tell you a lot of history of civilization, but they don't tell you that much about local history and the role of the church, and they don't tell you. So there is a lot of censorship in history books, and this is terrible, terrible thing to occur. And the reason I bring this up is because we are a part of the Faculty of Humanities. In the history department, they talk about these things. They talk about these things and they try to bring this or preserve this in memory. But you don't see any history book that really accuses the Catholic Church and um, that refers, very openly about the Black Legend. This is not information that is available to the public. And it's not that Panamanians don't care, it's just that it's cut off from the curriculum. They don't want you to talk about it, or they don't want history professionals or professors to talk to you about any of this that transpired here and how the Black Legend against the Spanish came to be because of political uh, conspiracy, among Europeans, and that some of this stories of abuse and so forth, they were manipulated, right, and translated and retranslated with all of these changes for Europeans to know one side of history that we didn't know about. It's like shameful to some extent. I think there's shame, but you have to tell the truth anyway, regardless of if the truth is ugly or bad, or if there is anything obscure about it. It's always important to tell the truth. I really don't know what your position is concerning this, but if we had to write a history of translation, they would have to tell the truth, be truthful, not just beautiful, because we just don't want to talk about facts. We need to refer to the facts. Okay, now the topic is over. Last time, is there any comment concerning what we've been talking about the Black Legend of the Spaniards?
It's a request, Professor. Can you mention the third movie because I couldn't get it? I have the first two, 1492, and then Apocalypse, and the third one I couldn't hear. Would you please repeat?
Second one is Apocalypto. Apocalypto. That's the second one. It's not Apocalypsis, it's Apocalypto by Mel Gibson. And then the third one, let me just make sure I get the name right, because I'm kind of, in doubt about it.
Regarding Apocalypto, I think it's in Amazon. I just recently they show it there.
Yeah, and in YouTube, I think you can get that one also for free, in YouTube for free. Same as the other one, 1492, it's available in YouTube, I think. You don't have to pay for it, really. Or, you can get it through other friendly websites that offer free movies. You can get that very easily in their browser because they offer you browsing, and then you get that one. Hold on, let me just get the name right. Allow me a second. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's just a movie about Jesuit missionaries. I think that's in some country in South America. One second. Yeah, here we go. Name of the movie is The Mission. The Mission. La Misión. Okay, The Mission. That's the name of the movie. It's not a new one. It's not a new
I
one.
think it's not.
It's a 1986 movie, right? So it's an 18th century Spanish Jesuits protecting a remote South American tribe in danger of falling under the rule of a pro-slavery Portugal. So they portrayed these Jesuits as saviors. But the reality is that they were also involved in the exploitation of the Indians. This is one that I think tries to present them under a better light. Under a better light, it's about the Guarani War. I think that has to do with present day Paraguay and in the border with Brazil-Paraguay border. That's I think where the story takes place. It was so good because there were excellent actors in it. Robert De Niro and Jeremy Irons. That's the reason why it became so good, and I think it was nominated to awards also. The Mission. So these three movies I just mentioned here, 1492, Apocalypto, not Apocalypsis, Apocalypto, and The Mission
Mhm.
are three
Right.
stories that I think are
I
worth
get it.
our time. In order to
Yeah.
know a little bit
Right.
more about what happened. Yeah. Is there any comment concerning that topic before I move forward? Now, I know during this certificate program, I've been bringing in some historical facts about translation. And the reason why this is relevant for us is because translation doesn't occur in a vacuum or in a void. No, it's a human activity that is as old as languages and cultures exist. There has always been the need for people to communicate, as you know, and we've been entertaining this very same topic for a long time. So translation is linked to history, none as in the other fields of linguistics. Those don't have anything to do with history, but translation does. And the reason is because it's a historical activity. We started talking here and during this certificate program about the Bible translation, um, the importance of the school of translation in Toledo, and how that was a model. I think the only one in existence ever of a place where you had such a different cultures that would get together and share one another and create some translation school for the sake of culture. I mentioned here that Alfonso X el Sabio, that was the king that flourished or brought this to its highest possible point. This interesting endeavor. Not that there weren't any other libraries in the past, of course there were, but there weren't any translation schools really for the people to share their knowledge like that. Then we started also discussing here um, about the existence of all of these different people who played roles in disseminating the culture and the role of translation in different events. Now we know through this certificate program that in translation, we must speak about what happened during the conquest, what was the Black Legend against the Spaniards, and the role of translation also in um, communicating so many ideas, you know, about illustrating the people. That this has always been an important activity for keeping, safe. I would say like respect for other cultures. What happened in America, all of that. Uh, I am planning to post probably during this free week a PowerPoint including most of this historical information with a little bit of a reflection, not an assignment, but a little bit of a reflection about historical events that we've been discussing here. Because I think this adds to our background knowledge, having all of this information on translation. and how that relates to Spanish or English is very good to know, to have all of these elements about how things have evolved, right? So many of these translation techniques, of course, came to be official during the 20th century, but they were also discussed in the past. They already existed. They were in existence. Now they gain a formal name or a formality in the translation theory through 20th century, 19th century developments. So addition is one of them, right? Addition. We started talking about modulation. I think that was on Wednesday. Now, yesterday, Thursday, we talked about transposition. And now today we're going to be talking about addition. So going back to what we said about modulation, modulation is, affecting all the structures that are involved in communication. That's the word, the syntax, the lexical elements, the syntactical elements, the cultural elements that, everything about it, about message is affected in order to preserve meaning. Okay, what you do is that you alter whatever is necessary. Sometimes you reverse the message, sometimes you twist it a bit, sometimes you alter the grammar, sometimes you use some coined expression or some neologism. So you resort to different things in order to preserve the meaning and make it as natural as possible. The idea behind this is for, your rendering to be natural. You want it to be idiomatic and natural. That's the situation there. Regarding transposition, what we've discussed is that this is reversing the order of elements to some extent, for as long as it allows you to present the message in a way that also communicates the meaning, but changes segments of the sentence, right? Is altered. What you do is that you transpose elements, right? You turn it upside down, not like that much, but you take a section that is at the end and you put it at the beginning and so forth. That is transposing, and we do it, much easily into Spanish. Okay, for linguistic reasons, transposing in English is not as easy, right? So this too. Now we're getting into addition. Now, so if the content of the target language translation is not the same as that of the source language original, then we may have either addition or omission, loss between the two versions. And it is diagrammed pretty much this way. There is loss when you have to leave out some piece of information, maybe because of, I don't know, maybe constraints or limitations in terms of language and communication. You leave something out. Sometimes it's necessary, or sometimes you can't prevent this from happening. And there is gain when from the source language, you have, a lot of the information, then you even have extra. That this could be because something is implied. Sometimes when information is implied in the source language for cultural reasons, then something like this can happen, and it will go either in the loss or gain direction. So you'll have to bear with me because there is some theory behind the reasons for adding information in translation, adding in the target language rendering. Because of the characteristics of the two languages, as discussed, on comparative linguistics, omission on specific words is more common going from Spanish to English, right? Because English is more economic and more, word order oriented and more limited in that regard, especially with grammatical forms such as articles and possessives used less in English because these are just for fillers, really. They are not content words, they're function words. That's what they do. They help the sentence function. They do not carry a lot of meaning. I'm talking about articles and possessives, for example, among others, such as prepositions also. The thing with prepositions is that since they are particles attached to other content words in phrases, then we cannot, immediately say, oh, we can go ahead without a preposition. They play a role because they are components of phrases. Conversely, addition is more common in going from English to Spanish because of the need to expand and explain or explain concise English phrases, which is heavy density of adjectives and nouns. So you know this. It's a phenomenon that requires communicating some extra information because the information is not available in Spanish, or Spanish requires explanations about certain cultural things. So additions and omissions can be inadvertent, okay? Or what does that mean is that they may come up anytime, or do not happen, happen, or not happen, okay? And that is something very difficult to plan about or to expect. They can be unavoidable due to syntactic, semantic, or lexical reasons, as I was saying, the nature of the two languages and the cultural content communicated or implied sometimes requires addition, sometimes requires omission, which is the counterpart, right? An example of a syntactic addition when going into English would be the need to expand the Spanish possessive su in order to avoid ambiguities. So we don't speak, to the same. It's not only yours that we have a lot of implied things with treatment. So it's su and so forth, which is a non-existing word in English, right? Possessives in this regard. Semantic additions can occur when something in the source language is not included because it would be obvious to most readers of that language, but should be included in the target language because of the probability that the typical target language reader would not be aware of that information. So that may seem obvious to a reader, but target language audiences do not share the same cultural background, or do not have the same education level, so to speak. So this would be the case of saying, laying out information in the target language, which is something implicit in the source language. Here we have an example. So a frequent example is information associated with common place names, political positions, and so forth. This ranks, or very contextual information is never like very clear for a target language audience, right? So just to give an example, an Argentine audience would not need to be told that Raúl Alfonsín was the president of their nation. But if a story about President Alfonsín was being translated from Buenos Aires news source to a U.S. News source, then it would be important to add information about who Raúl Alfonsín was. Otherwise, this is meaningless for target language audiences. Sometimes we have cases of lexical mismatches, right, that require additions. For example, that we have a girlfriend, that it's a very vague word. That could mean different kinds of relationships that you may have with a female person. So into Spanish, it generally stands as novia in terms of one-on-one equivalence. But if a young lady has, undergone some kind of formal commitment, then it's a fiancé. That could also be even a bride. So someone's, to be married, already with a white gown on her, right? So all of these meanings are inside the very same word. Novia would stand for either of the three, right? Could be just someone you have a relationship with, a female you have a relationship with, someone you have committed for marriage. It's a fiancé. That's a different term, different status. And the ultimate status of a novia will be a bride, someone you're about to engage in marriage, right? So the lexical mismatch between the two languages has forced us to add a piece of information that makes the target language different from the source language. So here's very important to add the information necessary to disambiguate the information to, avoid confusion. So this addition, I think, stands to logic. Okay, here we have another name for addition. In translation studies, addition is also known as explicitation. This is another name for it. And in English to Spanish translation, explicitation or addition is necessary in some instances. I'm going to be referring and entertaining some of them for the sake of our discussion here. And if you know of others that you would like to bring in, please go ahead and do so. Okay. So English generally leaves gender, formality, and relationships vague. Okay. Spanish needs to specify all of this. Here we have, for example, pronoun you. So you should sit down. That could be tú, usted, ustedes, vosotros. So there are different possible and this is what I sometimes get. I think readers get lost, or audiences listening to an interpretation get lost if there isn't this additional pieces of information, because the best attempt is made. Sometimes it's not enough, and the message gets incomplete. Gets across languages in an incomplete way. Good. Second is all these pronouns, third person, like his or her, um, especially if they're like possessive adjectives here. So Alex spoke to his friend. That could be amigo or amiga. And there is vagueness here, both in terms of the noun or the, relationship, because you don't know if gender role really, along with the pronoun itself. Okay, just see if I may move on. Okay, here we have dinner. This is a specific case of a specific word. So we'll have dinner later. Cenaremos más tarde. Okay. Cena must be chosen. If you see this case, this is a word that is troublesome, because it's even, it changes its status, it changes its parts of speech. Like you're gonna have dinner. Dinner is like established word, but here it could be used as a verb to be conjugated. Okay. Okay. And also this will require further explaining, because for English, dinner and a diner these are linked to the main meal or main meal of the day. That's what it really is. People don't speak much in terms of lunch, right? And don't speak much about breakfast either. So this is the main course of the day, okay? Dinner. That is why you see all of these American restaurants, they're diners. Like you have a Friday, you have Tony Roma's, and you have all these franchises, Applebee's, etc. They're all diners. What does that mean? It means that it's where people get together as a family or as a group or as a couple, and they go there for the main or most important meal of the day, dinner. in our culture, I think we don't have any given status for a meal in Hispanic or Latino or Spanish culture. We don't have any established main course or main meal of the day. We don't have anything like that. So this deserves additional explicitation. Look at neighbor, okay? Could be male or female neighbor. It's not clear. Mi vecino, vecina. Boss, it's another difficult one. So boss could be a man or a woman. We may tend to think it's a female, it's a male character, sorry, but generally, or chances are, it's a, could be different genders. Cousin, let's take a look. It's another difficult word. That could be a man, male cousin, female cousin. It's a hard word to come to explanation, and that will get eventually people lost until they verify the gender of the cousin. Friend is the same problem. Okay, amigo, amiga, teacher. You have there profesor, profesora. We don't know who a teacher is. We may assume it's female, but that could be male teacher. Sibling, same thing happens. If when people speak in terms of siblings, because they don't want to reveal who the person is. They don't want to tell you if his brother or sister. Partner is the same. And this partner could be a romantic partner, business partner. I think we have adopted, something similar here. Pareja, that could be, different kind of partner. We just don't know. Maybe as the person, goes on explaining, we'll get further information on what kind of partner he or she is talking about. Okay, good. It's important for us also to discuss here some issues on technical translation. The reason why this is so important is because this is one of the most, I'll call, intricate kinds of translation, legal. And legal translation, just like we were talking before about, I think we had a little bit on medical translation and translation. I think it's also a little bit of specialized like that. We were talking about those fields. This is, I think, one of the most demanding ones, because everything about legalese ends up being complicated unless you're a professional in the field. That is why yesterday we were saying that any good legal translator should eventually consider becoming a lawyer, because this is the idea behind being specialized in a field in translation, either becoming a part of that very same field or studying further into that, right? So many texts and reference materials are written for the legal field, especially as they relate to court translation and interpretation in the US. So this is their biggest market, right? Court translation and interpretation. Why is this? Because as we were saying before, anybody who is inside the legal system at some point will need assistance concerning decision making in terms of options offered or negotiations that are always occurring, right? I was telling you before also, I remember on Wednesday, that imagine the case of Maduro now imprisoned or indicted in New York. He needs lawyers, he needs court interpreters, and well, all of this costs money. That's the final truth behind all of this. And the only people who could provide the assistance are the ones who really know what's going on. And in order to explain this to him in Spanish, they need to be familiarized also with the Spanish legal system that's more Napoleonic than anything, because we use a different legal system in that regard, right? Okay. So the numerous organizations, most of them international, right? UN, American, states, World Bank, the Monetary Fund, and so forth, have produced a number of glossaries and other aids in translation that should be consulted. A translator can be asked to translate a number of legal documents during his or her career. So you have all kinds of documents involving in this. Birth, marriage certificates, contracts, court decisions, family documents, etc., etc. So many. And this must be approached with care and an understanding of the legal system from which the documents came, an intended use of the requester will make of them. So someone who translates this needs to know where this comes from and also know where this is going. And that requires knowing how the legal system works, in both languages. Okay? It's not only the language, it's also the legal system as it's designed. Frequently, the translator may be working across two legal systems, the case law, that's the Anglo-Saxon counterpart, and the code law, Napoleonic system of Latin America. So let's bear in mind this, the case law because it's based on antecedents, right? All decisions and rulings are made based on what was ruled before. That's considered what was ruled before, because it needs to be logic, right? And the code law is more like following the norms, strict norms, norm-based, which is more European also. That's the system in Latin America. So just to illustrate the problem concerning the two legal systems, we have that Engelbert cites the problem of a concept of notary in the United States and the apparent cognate notario that is in Latin American legal systems. In the US, a notary is usually a legal clerk. Okay? It's a legal clerk, administrative assistant, or junior bank official, registered with a local legal system for the purpose of administering oaths, authenticating signatures, and certifying documents. Okay, that's their specific, very concrete roles. This person performs the role of a notary usually as a supplementary activity to his or her primary employment in a law firm, bank, or other office, charging a nominal fee to notarize documents and signatures and administer oaths. So this person is a lawyer, generally, someone who is doing this as a side activity to their primary employment, generally. So this is important to be considered. In Latin America, in Panama, so to speak, for example, el notario is usually a lawyer with extensive legal training who drafts legal documents, advises clients, and keeps a registry of documents prepared or legalized. Power, authority, and responsibilities of the notario are much greater of those of a notary. So this difference led to a situation in California and other border states where irresponsible U.S. notaries were preying on Hispanic Americans by suggesting that they were able to perform certain functions for a fee in the U.S. legal system, similar to the role of a notario público in Latin America. So the reach of the activity or influence, or I would say, impact of a notario, it's much, much bigger or heavier than a notary in the United States. Over there in the States, it's just a legal secretary for doing some processing of a document for you, and that's it. They cannot perform any do any legal work for you unless you hire them and you pay extra. then you will go into the other side of their function, which is professional into the American legal system. All of that is controlled, right? Here in Latin America, it is not as such. So a notario has a lot more influence, and their role is much larger than that of a notary in the United States. So this is a good example. Very good. Now, cognates. We're going to go into cognates right away, because it's always a good thing for us to go over, all of this. Yeah, okay, we have formal. Take a look, which is a partial false cognate that usually stands for reliable, trustworthy. Not as ceremonious or formal, dress, no. Instead, we should use ceremonioso de etiqueta. That should be stand for formal, right? It's a false cognate, you have to be careful here. So formal, we have also, okay, it's repeated. Sorry about that. We have gabinete down here. We have only for the body of ministers or advisors. Okay. This is one of those words that we were discussing yesterday. How would you translate gabinete, gabinete presidencial or gabinete de ministros? So only for a body of ministers or advisors. That should be the proper term. A body of ministers, or the board of ministers, or the meeting of a board of ministers, or a president advisors. So or secretaries, because I think that term of a minister doesn't exist in American English. They use more like a secretary, right? So it's not as in cabinet for a piece of furniture. Instead of that, we have to go for the proper term in Spanish is vitrina. Vitrina. Okay, that's the right term. No, gabinete should be used. The vitrina term should be used. I don't know if you have any comment concerning this, because I think yesterday we were looking for an equivalence for gabinete, right? I don't know. Do you have any comment concerning this?
Yes,
Well, anyways.
they say they use it for religious purposes. They say instead of saying the pastor, they say he's a minister of the gospel.
Okay.
They interchange it. Sometimes they say he's a pastor, and sometimes they say he's a minister of the gospel.
The minister of the gospel, or he's a pastor. Very good. So, all right. So, and it's a figure of authority, of course. That's a figure of authority. That's what it means, really. Okay. That's another possible use. One that I think not everybody will know immediately, but they will. That probably needs addition or explicitation, like for someone to know more. Look at this one, gentilmente. Okay, not as in the case of gently. Okay, instead suavemente o cuidadosamente, or cuidadosamente. Probably charmingly or kindly could be better terms to mean gentilmente, kindly, charmingly. Okay, it's a false cognate. It's a false cognate because it doesn't mean gently. Gracia, for example, is a partial false cognate. Grace, but this also means a joke or funny. Okay, that's gracia. Juan tiene gracia. Juan es gracioso. Okay, it's funny, or he's a lot of fun. Granada, it's a partial false cognate. So it means, it has more than one meaning. So the country Granada is another one, same as in the explosive, but also pomegranate in the fruit, right? That's also Granada. Look at this one, gratificar. This is another good one, partial false cognate, to tip or compensate. Not as in gratify, instead use dar satisfacción, dar placer. That's more like compensating someone, right? Not giving pleasure, really. That's not what it means. So we have to be careful here. It's partial false cognate. Groceria, it's a grocery store instead of not a good one for grocery store, because some people could say something like that. Instead, we should use tienda, right? Tienda. Tienda is the right term if we mean that. Or kiosk. For kiosk is tienda. So grocery is more like coarse or boorish or crude act, right? It's a crude act or boorish or coarse. Vulgar, probably. So harmonizar is equals to create harmony. But that can also mean different things like coordinate, bring to interface, or synchronize, and so forth. Now that we're dealing with all of this list of cognates, this is what I'm planning to do with your cognates. During this break of a week, I'm going to extract all the cognates from this PowerPoint, and I'm going to put them into a single PowerPoint just devoted to cognates. Same as I'm going to do with all the historical information we've been covering. The reason why I'm going to post those two PowerPoints in Classroom is because I want you to do some work with it. This is going to be a part of our final assignment that we're going to be doing in August. But you won't be able to do it unless I separate these contents out of this master PowerPoint, because the reason why I have it all together is because I need a master PowerPoint to present it here. But now I'm going to start separating content. So I'm going to create one based on historical information, discussed or, presented here in this certificate program for you to go over again and answer to some questions concerning that content. And the same is going to happen with cognates. I'm going to provide some activity for you to do with all of these cognates, because as you have probably noticed, I'm going here with some alphabetical development of cognates, doing the best to see if we could create a dictionary or a glossary, a very good glossary of English, Spanish, English cognates. That's very good to, disambiguation, in order to make sure we don't get in trouble communicating some concepts here. This is the same I'm planning to do also with proverbs and idioms, because many of them play a role. I'm sure that as you proceed reading more into Remy Attic's material, you'll discover that he includes many of these proverbs and idiomatic expressions, right? Because this is cultural information. It's always good to come back to them. So we have here entre la espada y la pared, between a rock and a hard place, okay? This is a stock phrase. It's going to be anywhere wherever you least think of, this is going to jump to you, okay? And it's very common. Esforzarse por es to strive for. O este arroz ya se coció, o esto está listo. It's in the bag. It's in the bag. Estar a punto de, to be about to, okay? Estar chiflado, to be nuts. Estar de acuerdo, to be in agreement with. Estar de luto, to be in mourning. Okay? It's always good to have a number of all these phrases. Now here I brought in some images of what we were discussing about, and the Black legend of that came after translation during the golden period of the Spanish Empire. Now, of course, what happened later here in America, and how translation impacted both of these kinds of events. Now, in the 17th and 18th centuries, fairly a lot more recent, more connected to where we are right now in 2026, we need to also refer to what happened concerning translation, of course. Major advances in the theory and practice of translation during these centuries belong to England, right? And this has been amply documented by scholars such as Steiner in his English translation theory from 1650 through the 1800s. Not only were there important translations being accompanied by British writers, but perhaps there were other contributions to translation theory concerning how quality translation could be produced, and the duties of the translator that had to do with the original writer, right? And the role of the translator and the role of the writer, right? So, because of the practical nature of many of these observations made by British translator during the period, this is valuable for what we do translation today, or how we do it. By the 17th century, the impact of the Reformation and Counter-Reformation, this is concerning the church, and a more powerful parliament in England had run its course, with the important side effects of invigorating letters and rekindling interest in classics, and therefore in translation as well. So the status of translators was elevated. Okay, so from being disregarded back then, right, during the day, or not considered academic, in full force. Okay, so it's just like some side activity or assistant to the real writer, or to the bona fide, writer who was the creator of material. The status was elevated to the point that the best translators were given a position of quasi-equality to the original writers that they were rendering into English. So a translation of a classic also carried the name of its translator, as this was an important activity and an important academic undertaking, that required research and lots of work, right? The most prominent figure in this field of the 17th century was John Dryden, who not only was a major translator, but also an individual who established a basic typology or classification of translations, okay? And here we go into translation theory. Again, they could either be metaphrase, word for word, that's one name, the paraphrase, more sense for sense, or imitation, which the translator assumes some liberties with both the word and the sense of the original. So this is coming from John Dryden. So Dryden, he also acknowledged the basic dilemma of the translator caught between faithful to the original and yet also intelligible, when he said, it is impossible to translate verbally and well at the same time. This much like dancing on ropes with fettered legs, right? So a man may shun a fall by using caution, but the gracefulness of motion is not to be expected. So literal translation can go hand in hand with elegant writing, right? That's what it means. Dryden saw translation in very modern terms as a careful balance between the features that make translation an art, a craft, or a science. I remember during the first week we started talking about this. So what is translation really? Is it an art, or is it an art form, or a science? And the answer is that it is both. It is both. That's the agreement. And where does this come from? Well, this comes from history. Some historical figures in translation have said this before. Not that we're saying this because we want to. This is coming from historical accounts from translation work performed in the past. So Dryden is one of those, I think probably the very first one who coined the expression. Translation is science and it's also art. It's an art form. Now, he established some prerequisites for a translator. And it's important to keep this in mind, right? What is it that a translator needs to know or needs to be able to do? So a good translator, probably an interpreter also, should, number one, understand the characteristics that make the author individual, such like to know who you are translating or interpreting for. if you don't know anything about this person, then this is just not good. You know, you need to know. This is background necessary for translation. Number 2, conform his genius as translator to that of the original. What he probably meant is you need to understand what the original intention was of the text or of the presentation or whatever that is. You need to know. And you need to try to find a way to really understand it in order to communicate that in another language. Be literal when gracefulness can be maintained. You have to be precise, but sometimes that precision is going to be, sacrificed. But when it is possible to be graceful, so whenever there is the possibility of being literal, it is okay to do so. Make the original author appear as charming as possible without violating his true character. This is communicating his or her message, the author's message, the best, portray the best we can, right? Being fair to the person. Make the original author speak contemporary English. So if a person we're translating for produced some piece and it's not clear or it's confusing, then we should be able to modernize or update whatever it is that they're referring to. That's part of the mission of a translator, is that communicating meaning is also modernizing, updating. Try not to improve the original, so there must be a balance. You may modernize, but you don't have to alter the content. Try not to follow the original so closely that the spirit is lost, right? So this is an important thing to bear in mind. Okay, I would like to stop here for us to go for a brief break. I don't know if this is possible before I get into the rest of this content and move into other things. What do you say? It's 9:32. Would it be possible to stop right here for 10 minutes?
I guess.
Okay, so we'll be coming back at 9:52. Would it be okay?
Yeah, that would be okay. So that would be
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you. 10 minutes.
so 9:32, 9:42. That would be 9.
Yeah. We'll come back at 9:42. You're right. You're right.
Okay.
Thank you. Not new. It's not 20th century information. We're going to learn a lot of historical facts on translation from the past. And Dryden, as we know, he was a 17th century author. So this information on word for word, sense for sense, and liberties in translation, this is something known for a long, long time. And not only by the British, it's also something that the Hispanics knew, and different authors from different European countries and experiences dealing with translation. Okay, so here's another idea that I think it deserves our attention. So the 18th century brought a new and useful metaphor for translation. The translator would be a portrait painter who uses his materials to present an accurate portrait of reality, which would capture the spirit of the original, but then necessarily, features in detail or exact features. The translator cannot recreate nature. He must necessarily use a different palette and different colors, right? So his guiding principle should be to catch the spirit and strive for the same impact, okay? So a translator has a similar and equal responsibility of the original, to the original writer, to the reader, and to his standards. So in the late 18th century, this is other names that resonate in translation. Alexander Fraser, Tytler, and Lord Woodhousley 1747 to 1814, produced a classic work in the field of translation. For example, his essay on the principles of translation, he established simple basic rules and illustrated them with examples. 3 fundamentals are: 1, a translation should give a complete transcript of the ideas of the original work. Should be as complete. 2, or as complete as possible. 2, the style and manner of writing should be of the same character as that of the original. You have to preserve the tone, the character, and the image of the original piece. 3, a translation should have all the ease of original composition. Now, this is a tall order here, so to speak, and a long shot, because you have to familiarize yourself with the work, the quality of the work produced by the original, and try to create something similar, so that this is enjoyed as the original by other audiences, right? Not an easy feat, but ambitious plans, right? Okay, we're gonna have a little bit of humor here. I don't know if you will enjoy this one. I'm gonna leave you with this, and I'd like you to tell me how this relates to translation, please. So, what kind of information do we have in front of us?
These are like words that they mean fruits, but in our cultural kind of Panamanian culture, they have another meaning. So the meaning changed, and it's a political one, but it's related to our Panamanian context.
Thank you. Now, what do you think you would do with this information? Or how would you translate something like this? Because you could still translate work by someone that it would include this information. This is history. This is history, Panamanian history. So what is this? An instance of necessary addition, or something to be omitted altogether from translation? Is this an example of addition, explicitation, or omission?
Well, Professor, depending on the context or the historical paper I have to translate, for example, because as you said, it's Panamanian history. If it's mentioned that his nickname was Piña, I need to add what does that mean, because it doesn't make any sense. For example, in English, it says pineapple. It doesn't sing anything at all. So I need to add in this case. If it's relevant, of course, in the original source, in the original text. So for me, for example, this knew that mango was, I didn't know about that. So it's interesting. But piña, yes, it was very much common here in Panama, this nickname. But I think I need to make it explicit, so the reader can understand what is the
the meaning of the word in the Panamanian context.
Thank you very much, Professor Quintero. Is there any other opinion concerning this? Would this be material for addition, explicitation, or omission? And what's your rationale for your decision? Thank you. Whoever else is welcome.
Well, I consider it's an addition or explicitation, and it is to be added additional information, not needed actually, and especially how is it in what context is it going to be used? Because on a serious academic historical document, I don't think it would be relevant. Actually, it would lack of the elegance of the language now, because it is like nicknaming or making fun of someone. So that would be then just, for example, for las glosas, la llorona, that type of columns in the newspaper that used to that's their purpose actually, to make fun, to not be serious, just make the gossip go along and transfer the information. So, but it as a as it says here, a bit of humor, but we're not going to have a serious document filled with humor and this kind of humor, making fun of someone. That's my comment.
So what you mean is this is fine for journalistic style, but not for academic style writing. Okay, that
For
makes a lot of
journalists,
sense.
for
Mhm.
for especially for yellow one, the one that is not serious either. Yeah, not objective, but having use or they use it as a resource to show political discrepancies or opposition, and then they use this type of trying to diminish the consideration or the importance of the person who's targeted. So that it's a very particular kind of journalism, not also the first hand journalism.
But what will you do with this kind of information? I think if you ask me, a lot of history gets lost in the process of translating, or as we keep the records, because it tends to be disregarded. But this is real history. I remember people chanting during the protests and the marches, cara de piña, and this information is real. And I think here in our country, people knew about this issue with the military, that you could not either show them the fruit or tell them anything concerning the fruit, because you would be arrested. And at the U.S. Embassy, they knew about this too. So this has created, quite a controversy. Of course, we could say this is information that would not respect the historical figure, but I think it's important to bear in mind that these kinds of things sometimes need to be explained, because if you tell someone who doesn't know anything about this, they will never know that these were ways of either addressing the dictator or referring to his persona or who he was, right? So all of that is, I think, information that
Another
I don't know if you
example,
have other
for example,
opinions. Sure.
another just let me have another example for it, and that's why I consider it, well, it depends on the context and actually also the translator or the interpreter, and what is the role or position he or she is going to take into the situation or discussion, if that's the case. But another example would be, for example, um, Former President Laurentino Cortizo, with all his flaws and whatever we can point at, he was the president of Panama, of our country. And well, he was nicknamed Leche Condensada. And do you think that that is historical? I mean, can it be used just for a bit of humor? I think that is disrespectful. But well, that is our, like, and it is not our, I try to omit as much as I can that kind of usage or that kind of nicknames to anyone, but it is part of the culture in our, and especially in a particular status, I think, in a particular area. And that's part of, well, something that I think that we should overcome as a country, as a nation, as a citizens, because we have to be I mean, to have a critical opinion or a critical thinking uh, does not necessarily mean, and I mean, not necessarily at all, doesn't mean to make fun of others. And that is the point. But you were right. I mean, those were things that's historical. If we look at the newspapers and the quotes that were along he and many other people, it's been nicknamed, and everybody knows who they are talking about, and that's my point.
Right. Look, we have a situation in this country and in many others. And the thing is that we want to sugarcoat our societies. We want to bring across other cultures only what we consider is beautiful or what is nice or educated. But the reality is that we're not that educated really as a society. And the thing is, we assume they don't know abroad. They know what we are like. Look, if we had to hide something, we should have hidden los carnavales, the Panamanian carnavales, because that's where you see the beauty of this society. And there is, for some people, this is so good. For others, this is pretty ugly. But the fact of the matter is that this is who we are. This is who we are. And this kind of information sometimes needs to be communicated. One of the reasons why I was talking before about history books, that we don't have good history books that tell us the real deal, so to speak, in plain American English, is the real deal. We don't want to be truthful because of hypocrisy. A lot of hypocrisy transpires everywhere. We want to paint these characters as beautiful or the best option. And in reality, a democracy is built on the freedom to refer to them as a piña or a mango or whatever we want because of the behavior they have. We know that there is a lot of immorality and lack of accountability among politicians. And this is not only here, this is also in the States. Look at what's going on with Mr. Trump. Trump has been accused now of so many things concerning the Epstein's files. Many people say that this war was created now to hide what is going on, what happened over there and the story is ugly concerning Epstein files. So you should listen to what they are saying about the babies that they had, listening to their mother's voice for them to suckle from the breasts and grow faster. As for them, because they took away these babies from the pregnant underage women that they took to the island, and then there was this story, all of this ugliness about what they did with the babies. In case you haven't read any of that, or you feel like that is offensive, I encourage you to read a little more and listen to something else, because you need to know the truth also. Every time something comes out through media, there is, of course, some exaggeration, but there is truth also behind it. And these kinds of things define better the persona of a leader, the character, who they are. like as you know, and abroad they know who they are. They know who we are, what we are like. So we strongly encourage people not to hide anything. Don't hide anything. Tell the truth. That's the hallmark of good research. A good researcher, if you aspire to be a researcher or an academic, is to tell the truth. Sometimes the truth is ugly. So I'm gonna go a little deeper into this. Take a look. Take a look. Exactly, I hit the nail on the head about what you were saying. Some of these pet names, many people tend to hide these things because it's not because they respect the institutional, whatever fancy name they want to give it, but the reality is that they fear that there may be some retaliation from the authorities. So in a real democracy, we're entitled to refer to them as the pet names that define who they were or what they were up to. Okay. What about the first one? How would you translate that into English? Imagine that you had to translate a piece about a Panamanian president under the COVID-19 pandemic. Why would they call him like that? This requires addition. Addition. You need to add an explanation on why he had such a pet name. It is something he said. He said it himself. He said it himself, and you should remember that. This is not coming from giving him a name or name giving just because we want to be cruel. He himself named himself like that. The other one, our current president, he himself named himself like this. He said this. Okay, he said he is who he is. And look at his face. This is the image I got. Um, look at the expression. Look at their expression. So these people are their characters, let's be honest. These are characters. Look at the third one. Look, how could we consider this one a serious person? So, but people voted for this kind of presidents. They voted for this kinds of presidents. I don't know what the Panamanians have in mind, really, because, or the problem is that probably we don't have good candidates, right? We don't have good candidates. But look at the last one. So this is addition required, not omission to my if you ask me, that's my viewpoint. They name
That's what
themselves
I
as
said.
such. Sure, go ahead.
That's what I said. It was addition and explicitation. That's the case. Yeah.
So I don't really know for certain if you would omit any of this, but I encourage you not to do so. If you ever have to translate some information about any of these characters, you have to reveal who they were, in history, in Panamanian history. Believe it or not, in 100 years, if we're still in the world, if the world still exists as it is now at present, people will be talking about all of this that happened during this period of time in a so-called democracy, that we had these characters that they named themselves as such, and because of the activities they were into, because of the things that they did. So I don't know. That's democracy. I don't know the way you see it. If you have other viewpoints, you're welcome to share your perspective. This is from the viewpoint of translation. Translation. So I'm expecting your reactions. Your comments are necessary at this point.
Well, I think that's part of our culture, and I think I also think that we shouldn't omit it because it is history, and they themselves called short fuse, mecha corta, condensed milk, whatever, pineapple, mango. But that's part of our culture. Piña, cara de piña, that's part of our culture. We have to translate it because we are describing what happened in our history. So even though you might think that it was disrespectful because they were nicknames that describe them. And also in the case of cara de piña, and when we say that people couldn't even say piña or mango, and then that people would get arrested at those times as part of our history. And it is telling you about the reality we were in during that period. I mean, because that was abusive, and that tells you about the character of the government too, that was in power at that time. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. This looks very funny. Yeah, it's as you say, it could be disrespectful, but the way they have acted or ruled the country has been also disrespectful to many Panamanians. So, and that is the way we Panamanians, I think we are very unique. I mean, our humor, it's a part of our culture, and we tend to put nicknames. I don't know, maybe it's a way of uh, not taking it so seriously, uh, or not so ugly, or I don't know. We tend to give names, funny names to things or people. So I think it's important because this is relevant for us, definitely. But if this is part of history and we need to translate it, it should be as it is. And even with these nicknames, and they're very appropriate. If and funny, for as you mentioned, yes, leche condensada. So I think everybody in Panama knows about these nicknames and what they represent. So definitely it's part of our culture. So leche condensada, we know it's immediately that it's Nito Cortizo, and the current president, Mecha Corta, and then and also Varela or Tortugon. That's another important one. Not only Seco Herrano, but also the turtle, and then Martinelli, uh, with Los Zapatos del Pueblo. That is, it was never there. It never happened. He never cared or wanted to be in our shoes. So definitely this has to be an addition.
Okay, yeah, it's totally an addition. I think that what you meant, Professor, is that if in a research or we're going to translate, if the document refers to that particular case, I mean, we cannot sugarcoat it or just omit it. We have to. I mean, if that's part of the research and we are translating an information about the person that also includes these nicknames, we have to. I mean, we have to keep faithful to the original. That's not something a translator is free to do. I mean, we have to. And never mind. And what I am trying to say is that as a culture, that's how Panamanian the majority is, like in the culture, to make fun of people, nicknaming them. And yes, if we use the words depending if you're taking out of context the words they said, they describe themselves as such. I don't think President Varela, former President Varela, nicknamed him Pacha or Pachita. I really don't know. But that's how the people, common people, used to nickname the characters. Now, if it is necessary to be translated because the document or the piece of information we are translating includes those expressions, definitely we cannot omit it.
Yeah, that is why translation and history go hand in hand. Because what we are dealing with is real life articles, reports, things that the media journalism produces. Uh, we need to communicate, accurately, and we don't have to fear uh, speaking about certain things. Now, a good translator needs to create some explicitation or addition in case something like this is in any report or article to be translated, or any information or website or something. You have to comment on this and explain where this came from. Okay, so this is uh, the case, right? This has to be the case. And we shouldn't be protecting anybody's image because they're responsible for protecting their own image, or they have people behind them who, what they call asesores de imagen, whatever you want to call it. They are the ones who have to worry about it. We have to tell the truth. Don't worry about their image or about the institution, whatever it is that they want to talk about. So it's like they went into politics. They knew that they would pay a price for that. So here we go. You tell the truth about them, and if you have to interpret the truth about them. That's it. Okay, the opposite of addition is omission, right? So omissions in translation, like additions, can also be inadvertent or forced by syntactic, semantic, or lexical reasons. There are things that you need to leave out. And this is sometimes something out of your control. The semantic example given in the previous lesson was about President Alfonso's visit to the United States. This was written in English for a US audience. Okay, it would describe his position, politics, tenure, etc. It's like you see now that Ayatollah Khomeini was murdered, or through, a bomb. He was bombed at a place where he was with his family. I think he had a daughter, I think a son-in-law, and a niece. I know, but see, the granddaughter. They all died they were bombed by the Israelis because they were chasing or hunting him down. So they found him and killed him and his family. Now you see on CNN, Al Jazeera, and NTN 24, and I think the other one that shows a lot of it is France 24 also. I think, well, they're all showing, or BBC, they're all showing who he was, his life, um, what the meaning of an ayatollah is, or what rank he held in his religious organization. Now we know that it's not only a political organization. We know also now that this is um, a theocracy in which political ideas are influenced by religion. We know now some details, right, concerning who he was. This material uh, may be omitted if the story is told to a local audience. For them in the Middle East, it doesn't make any sense to explain what the Ayatollah regime is all about and what they do and how they do things. But for Westerners, that is us, it's required because we don't know anything about any theocracy in Iran. This is so far away from our context. We have no idea. We have no clue. People don't even know how the presidency and the elections operate here in Panama. So less to say, or least to say over there in the Middle East. and they never have elections. They don't have it. They don't know. They don't have a democracy, and all that. All that is generally explained. So after his killing, that happened like this past week, maybe like 3 days ago, 4 days ago, he was killed. They started talking about who he was and showing pictures of him when he was young. And so for the first time, we had some information about him through media, because they know all of this, but they won't tell you any of this because it's irrelevant. So it's omitted until a time like this comes, and they want to tell everybody that he was bombed and killed. Now we have his curriculum. So for us Westerners, this makes a lot of sense. For the Middle Easterners, this doesn't make any sense. So the flowery and redundant nature of many Spanish phrases, especially when prescribed formulas are involved in situations such as speeches and business letters, all that requires omission when going into English, okay? So this is very important, especially valuable if you're going to interpret, or if you're going to translate, let's say maybe a letter or something, or maybe a transcript from some live event or something that occurred, or you're going to provide an account on what was said at an event of some sort. So you see, this is cumbersome and very weird what I'm showing you here. So this would be a translation or a rendering of what someone would say, right? Okay. You see here in Spanish, this is pretty much what people would tell you at an opening of an event, or maybe either it's academic or of a showing of some monument of some sort, or what we like to call them like develación de placa, things like that, you know, so plate presentation, all that, so fancy and all that. So a lot of language is useless, a lot of wording, empty wording. All that is going to be narrowed down and omitted. Okay. So take a look. How would you what kind of things would we say? Sin mayor motivo, tomo esta oportunidad para expresarle con mi mayor consideración y aprecio, y me ubico al servicio de ningún otro tema conveniente. So you see, all that is empty wording. But this is what happens with Spanish, right? So both languages, English and Spanish, have their own filler words which add nothing to the content of the message and can and should be omitted in translation. So what information is valid? What information should we add? That if they refer to leche condensada, and then someone who's reading, they don't know that leche condensada means Laurentino Cortizo, then we need to add that information for clarification. We need to clarify that information for our reader, or we need to interpret that for the audience, for the public. They need to know who was leche condensada, just to give an example. And we have to translate that clearly, you know. Maybe that's, you know, may cause a laugh, maybe, but it's necessary. At that point, that could be necessary. Okay. But other things may not be necessary. You see, all that empty wording and all that, that's useless. That should be omitted. And sometimes also English uses doublets, and those doublets come from Anglo-Saxon culture. What that means is that you provided one version in Anglo and another one in Saxon. That's the explanation provided by the English translators. That's why the doublets became so popular, because they use one from each of the two root languages adopted by English, or that English regarded their root languages, Anglo and Saxon, such as in some combinations, such as bold and courageous, strangers and foreigners, dirt and grime, etc., etc. So many of them, as I was mentioning, just mentioned here, come from cultural tendencies, right? And root words from both languages were frequently used, the Anglo and the Saxon. English also does this with pairs of Latin and Anglo-Saxon words. And this is very common in legalistic writing, right? Spanish translation could efficiently reduce all of that to narrow it down to the best possible meaning in one word only. In other cases, prepositions or other individual words have an idiomatic meaning. That should not be translated and that should be omitted, right? You take a look here. We have some information that needs to be omitted here. So she's on her way down. Ella está bajando. We're like narrowing this to the best possible choice that's more economic. Speed it up. Rápido, right? Rápido. I don't know if you have a comment concerning omission. If there is anything you'd like to add. Maybe you do want to add something. It's on you now. If there isn't much to say on your part now, you tell me about these cases here. What do you think about them, please? Take a few minutes to analyze them and let me know what you think information is being omitted here on how things are omitted here or why. Thank you. Right? I'm open to comments.
Okay, do we have to start from the first one or for whatever, whichever we want to start with?
Whichever you feel deserves your attention.
Okay, the last one is very interesting because it says, I would like to know what you think about it. In Spanish, it's quiero saber. It's not bad, but I don't know if it's really related, faithful to the original, because in English, I would like is more polite. And in Spanish, you say quiero saber is much more direct. So for me, it's kind of say quisiera saber instead of quiero, at least. I don't know. This is what I think about the way you address the translation, right? Also because I would like is much more polite. So to do it in Spanish the same way, quiero is too direct.
Or maybe if you say in Spanish, me gustaría tu opinión al respecto.
Okay, thanks. And then
It
we're
sounds
going to
more
meet each
polite in
other.
a way in Spanish, similar to the English version. I don't know. Yeah, instead of, yeah, as Katia says, quiero is like too direct. And in English, when it's used would like, it's more polite. So the Spanish translation should try to be similar to the original.
And also number three,
What else do you see? Yeah.
we're going to meet each other tomorrow morning. Nos veremos mañana. I think it's for me, it's okay. I don't have to say each other to make any sense. Meet each other is like redundancy in Spanish. Tomorrow morning is mañana. It's just mañana por la mañana. It's like, it's not necessary. That's what I think. So nos veremos mañana. It's okay. Because also you're talking about the future. So veremos is okay too.
But
That's my.
that Spanish translation should specify a little bit more because it's in the morning, mañana, but at what time? More or less, maybe mañana temprano. I could add maybe that last word to be more similar to the original. Tomorrow morning, because mañana is could be any time during the day.
Thanks. What else do you see?
Right. In that case, it could be any time of the day, but it is suggesting or being logical. If first thing is first, then we have mornings first. So I think it implies mañana in our case, in Spanish is next day, the next day. But being specific, well, it doesn't I mean that disagree with the English version because morning, what is they're trying to say is the first time of the next day is the morning. That's my.
All right. What else do we see?
Yeah, I think that's the same case of the first one. I'm going to call you later in the evening. And it says te llamaré luego. Me, that would be te llamaré luego en la noche. Because if I say te llamaré luego, you have the whole day and you don't know when. So it's not too specific there. Maybe something cultural, but I don't think that translates the intended meaning of the first sentence.
Or the
So,
first, we can say, te llamaré más tarde.
But that would be the
so mhm.
that would be the same because you're not. It's in the evening. You see.
Now, what is sacrificed here?
Yes, I
Because
was
every time
thinking.
you omit, you sacrifice something. What is sacrificed?
Yes, I think it depends also on the context because if it's not necessary to say exactly what is like very specific evening or morning, I would sacrifice those two words.
I think that there is an economy of words or expressions in the translations.
Well, if you are translating, that's one thing. But if you're interpreting, that's another thing. Because if you're interpreting, you're having a conversation and you both know what you're talking about. But if you're translating from a text, you would have to render the information. That's what it. I don't know.
So yeah, sometimes the rendering is not as accurate compared to the source, but it's pretty natural, or it tries to be pretty idiomatic. It's not as ambitious as to render a translation that is so precise, but it's effective. The meaning is conveyed. And this is what I think sometimes occurs when you have to omit. You omit because you are rushing communication, really. You're trying to pass on the information without much detail. Sometimes you leave irrelevant or unnecessary information. You're leaving it aside. So yeah,
It
this is
keeps, yeah,
yes.
it keeps the sense.
Uh-huh. Yes, it depends on what.
It depends. I believe that it depends on the content of the conversation because the first is a conversation between a family or maybe with a friends. In this moment, the first sentence, talk about exactly a translator.
There are things that are implied, like that can be redundant if we use the whole expression as it is, and it is unnecessary. Like, for example, nos veremos mañana, we have to meet each other. We are going to meet each other. It's not necessary, it's redundant. And well, the nos implied that there's more than one person here. We're talking, and then we have the verb veremos. We nos veremos, and it is well grammatically used tomorrow. So it keeps the sense. It is grammatical. It's natural, and it's saving words. The wording and it avoids wordiness.
Now, how would you rate these omissions? Are they good? Is this a mistake? Is this negligency on the part of the translator? What's your opinion? What's your assessment of these renderings, of these omissions in translation? What do you think? Are they appropriate? Do they serve a
I think they
purpose?
are effective. I think they are effective.
Also to avoid unnecessary wording and the expression like is more natural. So naturalness is important too.
Okay, I think you know, all those things you mentioned are true, but it's also true that Spanish is a wordy language. So if you, you know, if you are um, effective enough in making Spanish, you know, economic, this is a great thing to do because chances are when you communicate information in Spanish, it usually becomes longer. So here, what they're doing is counter, you know, the natural trend, which is for Spanish to be longer than English. Here, you're making Spanish more economic than English. This is great, especially if you're interpreting, especially for interpretation. For translation is great too, but if for interpretation, this is wonderful because we have accomplished a great feat. And this is what is expected of a professional translator to, you know, focus on the core. I don't know if you have any comment, any extra final comment.
Well, a final comment in my case, I have for interpretation, but also for translation in the case of dialogues, for example. If there are some parts of conversations in novels or in short stories that require some dialoguing, and I think that this would be a great way to translate very effectively.
Thank you. Anything else along that line or something else?
We cannot forget that in Spanish we also say, te llamo mañana en la mañana, yeah? Or te llamo por la noche. And those are things that I would have to translate. Because I want the person to know when I'm going to call her, because that's important for me and for her to know and for her to be aware of it and pay attention to the fact that I'm going to be calling in the evening or in the morning. That's why I gave the information. Te llamo por la noche. Te llamo por la mañana.
All right. So when interpreting or translating into English, some information in the source language can be omitted, reduced, or not explicitly repeated because English often prefers concise and direct phrasing. These are common guidelines for what may be omitted, noted, while keeping the meaning accurate. Right? So yeah, every time we go from Spanish to English, economy of language is an aspect to consider. So,
Professor, also have comment about register. Here, I think register is very, very much important. Because when we translate, for example, business letters that are very much formal, we have to keep like the omission. I think it needs to be very much pay a lot of attention. But if the register is a colloquial one, I think that omission, that's why register also will give us also the necessary context in order to make the right decision.
of course, agreed. Yeah. Style also, because if it is something like that belongs to a genre, of course, writing genre or style, there is a style involved in.
Yes.
Sometimes that requires the economy also. Thank you. Very good comment. Thank you very much. So yeah, register is something to be considered very seriously. Okay. I'm bringing in some instances here, repeated of the omission, right? Some omissions. So take a look, some repeated subject, that could be the case. So in some languages, subjects are repeated, like mañana por la mañana, right? That, you know, that was just mentioned here. Now, guideline. If the subject is clear in context, avoid repeating it. Okay? So, no mañana por la mañana, simply mañana. That's it. If you want to say anything else, mañana temprano, maybe, something like that. All right? Example, Spanish dijo, so in Spanish, Juan dijo que él iba a venir y que él iba a traer comida. It's pretty wordy, okay? That this is Spanish, right? In English, Juan said he would come and bring food. Okay, all of that repetition, that's unnecessary. So this is the guideline. The guideline comes from common practice or good practice translation criteria. Not that we cannot repeat if we want to be a little bit wordy or lengthy. That could be okay, but that's not as good as being more economic, which I think is the ideal. I don't know if you have anything to say concerning this. If you have a comment, please go ahead and do so. Comment on it.
In the regular conversation, such as this one, well, yes, in languages rather than English, there are repetition of phrases that are unnecessary. There are too many words. That's our case in Castilian Spanish. But for example, in poetry, if we talk then in about literature, then in poetry, this is a style. Not precisely this example, because I don't feel any literature or literary device here. Juan dijo que él iba a venir y que él iba a traer comida. But there are some repetitions occurring in stanzas to create an emphasis, to create a mood, a tone, or an emotion. And that's a part of it, but the style, that's different. Okay, that would be the analysis I'm getting, or going a little bit to other branches, applying the same particularity.
Thank you very much. You just brought in literary translation. Of course, this is a field in itself. Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you. This is true. There, the wordiness is more than justified. Yeah, because of style. This opinion goes along the lines of what Professor Quintero mentioned just a while ago concerning style, right? And register. Very good. Thank you. Okay, we have another one here. Redundant possessives. Now, what we've learned is from comparative linguistics that because of Spanish being the way it is, in Spanish we repeat possessives a lot. Le tomó la mano con su mano derecha. That's like very descriptive. Sometimes it's necessary, but English is more economic, right? The style, the way it's conceived in English is different. He took her hand with his right hand. That'll be like a lengthy translation, shortened to he took her hand. So clarity is more important than precision or accuracy to the source language, especially if we're going from Spanish to English, right? From Spanish to English.
But then
I
it's
don't know.
clarity in that in the previous expression, I'm going to call you later in the evening, then I would have to say, te llamaré. en la noche. And that would be precise. The same as the other one. We are going to meet each other tomorrow morning. Okay. I have to say, nos veremos en la mañana. No nos veremos mañana, because then that is precise. Nos veremos en la mañana is the precise translation of we are going to meet each other tomorrow morning. Not temprano. Temprano doesn't say anything.
Well, thank you for your comment. If there is anything else along those lines, just go ahead. So, all right. Redundancy should be avoided, right? At all costs. So that's the bottom line issue here. Yeah, let me just move this a little bit. Yeah, let me just go back a little bit here. This deserves to be moved a bit. Just a second. Okay. Just go down a bit, probably. Okay. All right. So we have some fillers and these course markers, you know. So these are okay for conversational flow, okay? But look at this. Well, you know, I mean, basically like guideline. Omit them unless they carry meaning or tone that matters. If you find that this is just additional layers of wording, leave them out. That's what's advised, right? So this is in case of omission. Also, for politeness and formal phrasings, we have that many languages include extra courtesy phrases, such as, look at this example, le agradecería mucho si pudiera ayudarme. So we have to simplify that because it's too much for one intentions, too much. I'd appreciate your help. I appreciate that, right? I appreciate it. As simple as that, it means the same. It's as elegant and as polite, right? It's reduce overly formal phrases to natural English equivalents. So this is moving from Spanish to English, right? So double expressions. Some languages repeat ideas for emphasis, right? So look at these examples. So cada uno y todos nosotros, all right? Cada uno y todos nosotros. I once had trouble a little bit translating the Three Musketeers slogan or motto, which they said all for one, once for all, and one for all, because you know, I was wondering if there was a way to keep that, and that has to be, you know, rephrased as accurately as possible because it's an important piece of information. There is no room for omission in cases like this, but in others in which the information is not meaningful or symbolic, then we merely, you know, we may very easily leave out something like this, you know, all of us, period. So use one clear expression in English. That's what is suggested. Explicit pronouns when verbs already show meaning are a similar case. This is very, very common in Spanish. Yo personalmente creo. Simply, I believe. This personally, it's an emphasis that's is necessary if you are, highlighting some opinion. But if you are not, you leave out personally. That's what's suggested. I don't know if you have any comment up to this point.
Right. It can be a reflective form, but it's unnecessary. Unnecessarily. I think that it's directly, I believe, because otherwise you would be talking about yourself. Yo, that's it. Why to say personalmente? The reflective case here is unnecessary.
Thank you very much. I don't know. Are there other opinions? Another case is also cultural or structural redundancy, right? Certain constructions are natural in other languages, but unnecessary in English. Okay, unnecessary in English. Look here, Spanish, hace 2 años atrás, right? English is 2 years ago. We have to omit that back or atrás. That's like it's it's redundancy. Do you have any comment? So we have overly detailed time or location phrases. So it's possible in Spanish we'll say things like en el día de hoy. Look at that. So today. So do you have any reaction to this? Have you had to interpret someone saying like en el día de hoy? You know, what do you think about that?
I don't know. Yes, that is redundant, but we are used to saying this way. Of course, if we analyze it, yeah, it's redundant. But I think it's part of a culture, I don't know, or language in Spanish, having so many words when we want to express something. We don't want to be so direct. Instead of saying en este día, It's the same as saying today. En el día de hoy, it's like many words, yes. But that is the way we speak in Spanish.
Yeah, it's very idiosyncratic. Our Spanish is very wordy. What do you think, for example, if someone, because I've listened to this a lot in the University of Panama campus, people say this, mas sin embargo, and then the rant goes on, right? Like
You're
blah
right.
blah.
It's very
But
common.
mas sin embargo, what do you think about that?
Well, with más sin embargo, I think that más can be omitted, but with the other expression, en el día de hoy, you're going to find that in many official speeches and legal documents. So it is kind of formal in Spanish to say en el día de hoy. But with the other one, más sin embargo, the más is not necessary. That's like a figure of speech. Sin embargo, and that you continue speaking.
That's one of those double-barreled expressions. That's more like over there to help a person process information or provide, like one wants to create some attention before he provides or she provides a reason, and this comes out automatically in speaking a lot. It's here because it's what we listen to every day when we talk to people or we listen to someone addressing an audience as a mas sin embargo, and they do it naturally. It comes out naturally. It's like creating some hedge that is very emphatic hedge. The hedging is, going in one direction and then turning it around or bringing in some unexpected element. And people need some space. And I think in speaking, it's not as clear. That sin embargo is just like probably weaker in discourse. That's the way I see it. That's the analysis I've made of mas sin embargo. In everyday discourse, if you say sin embargo only, this is very weak because what you're telling is additional information, some additional information that is not so relevant. But when you say mas, is that pay attention because what I'm going to tell you is revealing. So this is a stronger form in discourse for a person to hedge. And the phenomenon is hedging, is that you're going in one direction in your reasoning, and all of a sudden you want to escalate it a bit in another direction, or you want to pay attention to something else, or bring somebody's attention to something else you're developing or arguing. So part of this is the rhetoric, that some forms have become weak. Sin embargo sounds more like excusing yourself or excusing somebody or providing some excuse, and an excuse is weak. What you want to create is a strong argument for the other person to think about what you're telling them. I don't know if I've made myself clear, or if you have a different position or opinion about más sin embargo.
I think that's if you say más sin embargo, it is informal speech because you can render meaning by also using the intonation. See, sin embargo, and then you are implying what you want to say. Pay attention.
And do deans and authorities and people in the government speak like this way? So this is something that it's a topic that I consulted at RAE's dictionary. And this is what they say. Lo normal es usar solo uno de los dos elementos o la locución adverbal, sin embargo. o la conjunción más o más frecuente, pero. No obstante, el español admite la combinación redundante pero enfática de ambos. Por ejemplo, no me creyeron, mas sin embargo dije la verdad. Otra, no hay delito y por tanto no hay culpable, mas sin embargo huyes y aquí me dejas. All right. This is coming from H. Salcedo, El árbol del deseo en las obras de un acto, México 2002. So this is from the RAE website, Real Academia de la Lengua, in an area called Consultas Lingüísticas, okay, which you find answers. But you know what they don't do at RAE? They don't tell you an analysis from the discourse viewpoint. So that is why, if you ask me the reason why this has become adopted, like más sin embargo in speaking, especially here in Panama, because I've listened to this way of speaking from so many people, regardless of their educational level. They speak like this because I think when you say sin embargo, you are excusing yourself, really. It's a weaker form of argumentation. And más sin embargo, it's a lot more emphatic because it's a stronger way for you to argue in favor of whatever it is that you're developing, your ideas. So that's the thing. So this has different, viewpoints for analysis. We should be consulting this to someone from the Spanish department. Probably I will take it to some of the colleagues over there in the Spanish department. RAE has an opinion, but I'm going to be asking someone who's more familiarized with discourse analysis. Maybe they do have
Yeah, but
an explanation.
according to what you read, it says that it is admitted, but it is redundant. So
Yeah, of course it is redundant. And it is admitted because it's, I think, emphatic.
So it really depends on the person that's speaking. Okay.
Right. It's idiosyncratic. People would use it, concerning what it is that they're developing, maybe some argument in the court of law. Who knows? But I've seen this come from those instances to everyday speaking across campus, and authorities, students, everybody who arguments will resort to más sin embargo all the time, which is wordy. It's improper, but I think it's part of argumentation. Take a look. Articles that are not needed. Sometimes English omits articles used in other languages, namely Spanish. La naturaleza es importante. So nature is important. Repeated connectors. So languages may repeat connectors like that. This is the case of that in English, is that that is an optional word according to grammar, English grammar. So in Spanish we have dijo que él cree que es verdad. He says he believes it's true. So that is optional. It's an optional word. I don't know if you have any comments concerning this.
Well, in the case of Spanish, I think it's better to say él dijo que qué. Él dijo creer que es verdad. O él dijo que es verdad o cree que es verdad. So maybe the order of él is makes it weird. And yes, in English it's optional. He said that he believes it's true, or it's better in spoken to omit it. So it's optional in English.
Yes, in Spanish there is el queísmo. It's something like, here we have it a lot. Sí, porque qué, porque él dijo que me dijo que, something like ese queísmo that it's unnatural.
Mhm. it's a way of speaking. The dequeísmo and queísmo, that is a way of speaking that's referential. You're always referring to what someone else said. And this is from our culture. It's more collectivist than individualistic. Now, Anglo-Saxon cultures tend to be individualistic, so they rely more on the I. I say, I think, I believe. Okay, you take that stance in communication. But from a Latino culture in general, same as in Italian, I think, and Portuguese, namely, I think it's more like that. So you're referring back to somebody else's words. It's more collectivist, referential, not so individualistic or personal. So I don't know if you have any opinion on this regard.
And yes, also because students tend to omit the yo when they are speaking English, because in Spanish you omit the yo, because also culturally people say, pero ¿por qué hablas siempre de ti? It's a kind of cultural and negative connotation, and that's why they have the tendency to omit the I, but in English you need to do it, otherwise it's not understandable.
One of the things I think, one of my, I would say, insights about our culture, not a negative one, of course, because I'm not here to criticize negatively. It's more, of accounting on what it is like, is that since we're so collectivist, we don't say I so much so that and you see that you don't want to be accused of being egoistic, or I don't know, or egocentric, or um nowadays you're accused of so many things just because of the way you put your message across. The people don't accept um personal opinions very easily. They don't like that in our culture. They don't like that because they're not used to that. That's a reason why I think foreigners have trouble joining individualistic cultures like the Anglo cultures. And I'm not saying the United States alone, saying across the globe, up there in Europe, I think it's also the same. When you sit down or you talk to people from those environments, the way they carry themselves, the way they carry themselves, not uh, it's based on what it is like in their societies. It's very individualistic. People have their own opinion and their own position. They tend to group themselves as in tribes or groups like that, close groups, because they're together because they share a view on something. Here we don't have anything like that. People don't share any view on anything. They're just there because it's necessary and because they're used to be collectivists in that regard. The dynamics are different. The social dynamics are different. People need their family so much. This is another thing that is reflected in language, right? I'm talking from a social cultural, social linguistic perspective, which is also connected to the way we speak. All of that is referential. You need to refer to somebody else's words because the group is the king. It's a key element. In the Anglo context, it's not like that. Okay, you have to rely on yourself, and you are uh, uh, taught to be like that. That's why schools are so rowdy over there, because what you're gonna start clashing with their independence, and that's enforced in those societies from very early age. That people, you have your own identity. You're you. If you want to change your sex, you can change your sex. If you want to smoke pots, you smoke pots. If you want to consume drugs, you're entitled to do so. Uh, all of these things. But you also need to carry on your shoulders debt for your studies, and you have to pay taxes. And if you don't pay, you're not entitled to citizenship. And then all of these issues that you see that become pressure for the population is a part of the system. It's a system of values that relies more on the individual. The individual is at the center, but the capital is also at the center. By that I mean money. For us, it's the opposite. Money is not that much in the center. Your mom is more at the center. Mom. That's why when mothers pass, people feel like it's the end of time of the family. You know, if you ask, if you survey people in our context, what is the death of family? Death of family is the death of the mother. See, when the mother disappears, family comes to an end. And generally it happens, I think, because it's like you need someone who will glue, it's like glue for everybody to come together, you know? It's like everybody is around that. So if there is no mom, and we don't have any more moms in Latin America, then it's going to be the end of Latin America little by little. It's dying. Latin America is going to be dying because this is what people have at the core, their family. That's why we're, you know, so immersed in corruption. And it's not that we're corrupt. It's just that we're family oriented. If you are appointed to a position in politics, you're going to be naming or recruiting or bringing in your group. And who do you think your group is? Your friends and your family. That's the people you're going to bring in. And that's what you see every time you have a change in administration. Now the Americans are doing the same thing. Of course, they do it in disguise, but they sometimes do the same. But in general terms, over there, nepotism, there are laws that protect them against nepotism, but nepotism is part of Latin America life. There is no way of escaping that nepotism, appointing relatives. If you want to get ourselves rid of you know of that kind of corruption, you have to bring in different people, not Latin Americans, because that's our value. You know, everything is around the mom, and everything is around the family. All we care about is the family, not even the money. It's the family. So, key rule in interpreting and translation. Never omit information that changes meaning, legal content, numbers, names, dates, or instructions. So facts. Factual information will never be omitted or should never be omitted. Okay, I don't know if you have some additional advice based on your experience. If you want to share it, you're welcome to do so. If there is anything else, then we're gonna go into the application here. So, as was in the case with addition, translator needs to be aware of the possibilities. and sometimes the requirement to add or omit or keep the translation accurate and idiomatic in the target language. Remember, what matters is that this is accurate also, but idiomatic. By idiomatic, they mean natural, and accurate means precise. So it's a balance. You see, it's part of what John Dryden was referring to back in the 17th century, that translation is a work of art. Because you need to balance two complex components of communication here: precision and naturalness in communication. Okay, I'd like you to give it a try to this, please, if you may. I'm going to allow you a couple of minutes to take the sentences and provide your best version. Omit or add to your heart's content.
Should that be in order or any?
Pardon?
If the participation is in order of
Whichever one you feel like providing your rendering, that's more than welcome.
okay, well the third one, we hope that
Mhm.
we can see you again soon. Esperamos verte pronto.
Okay, thank you. What did you omit?
Oh, the subject is not necessary because of the ending, the suffix in Spanish. Um, and again, I think again it's not necessary. Just pronto, or maybe nuevamente, or any of the two, but not both. Of course, that we don't need that, and the modal auxiliary can.
Wow, so you did a lot of omission. You see, this is great because Spanish is not economic. Thank you very much. Great job. Who else?
The first one, decidieron que viajarían el otro año o el año o el próximo año. Could be a possibility.
Great. What did you omit?
Again, the subject is not necessary, the pronoun, because in Spanish, just the suffix indicates it. And yeah, in this case, it's important to keep the que with that in English. And it's not necessary to repeat the subject again, they and they. So, and since you're using modal auxiliary would, with just one word, viajarían, and also meeting the no, up to there, yeah. Next year is important to state it in Spanish.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Somebody else, please.
The last one has says he promised that he would help us tomorrow. Prometió que nos ayudaría mañana. So I omitted the subject. Prometió, he promised that he will help us, que nos ayudaría mañana.
Yeah, that's a great one. Prometió ayudarnos mañana.
Yes,
Also, right? That could be even few
yes.
words.
Prometió
And
ayudar. Yes, you're right. Yes.
in Vasquez Ayora's book, we find a lexical unit called the periphrasis. Periphrasis, I think that term doesn't have a translation to English grammar because I think that doesn't exist as a combination of verbs. Because when you have a verb and a verbal and you have a preposition, prometió que nos ayudaría, that could be kind of an instance of a periphrasis if I'm not wrong. that'll be worth going back to Vasquez Ayura's first chapter and take a look at the periphrasis, because it's the opposite of paraphrasis, which is paraphrasing, which is altering meaning. Here is not altering anything, but it's just like concentrating. What you do is you contract, but you preserve meaning, and by narrowing something in the grammar. Very interesting instance. Others, please.
Or maybe if we use su, él prometió su ayuda mañana. O ayudarnos mañana. Él prometió su ayuda mañana. O ayudarnos, prometió su ayuda mañana.
Yeah, we have to be careful with the conjugation, of course. Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution. One more, please.
And this one I said, I think that it is important to study every day. Creo importante estudiar a diario.
Thank you. Sure, go ahead, please.
Omitted that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anything else?
Pienso o creo en la importancia de estudiar diariamente o todos los días.
Thank you.
Creo importante estudiar diariamente.
Sounds good too. Any comment? Do you have any comment concerning this? Any insight? These insights are very revealing.
And the thing that we hope that we can see you again soon. It's interesting because in English we can do it like shorter when you say hope to see you again soon. So interesting to see that also in English we can omit in some cases also the subject.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
So I can say esperemos verte pronto o verte de nuevo pronto. Verte de nuevo. Esperamos verte de nuevo. When you say
Okay.
esperamos verte de nuevo, obviamente es en otro momento.
Thank you.
O esperamos verle pronto.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Professor, some of the insights that you were telling us, well, at least for me, is just to discover that nevertheless, Spanish is very wordy. Then we can see that in this case is the other way. And it's very interesting to see the differences in our own native language. Right?
Exactly. So this is always challenging. We have a little bit more of the same now. A little bit more. Just a little more. Give this a try too, please.
Okay, the first one. Te llamo mañana.
Te llamo o te llamaré. Right?
Well, yeah, te llamaré should be more appropriate. Or in formal language, we could say te llamo. I heard that a lot.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Agree. You're saying mañana, so I think it's implied, right? Okay. Very good. What about the second one?
Ella dijo que llegaría temprano.
Okay. Dijo que llegaría.
It's
Thank
quite
you.
similar thing. Both.
Thank you.
Tercero, planeamos terminar el proyecto hoy.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, because be able to can be omitted, like also with the number 3 and number 5, that says quiero entender las instrucciones claramente. This poder entender, it's just, we can say quiero entender.
Right. All that needs to be limited, right? Because it's too
Yes.
much. It's
Yes.
overwhelming.
Yes. Yes.
I agree. Very good. What about number 4?
Me dijo que comenzará la reunión temprano.
Alrighty. Very good. Now, do you have any comment on this? Omission and addition? Is there anything that you'd like to say or comment for everybody? Okay, a little bit on diplomatic translation now. Next, this is another specialized field that deserves at least a mention in our program. So so far we've talked about technical translation, medical, legal, business. Now we're dealing with diplomatic. In diplomacy, the shift away from using a single language, French, in the past decades has created a series of problems as well as increasing demand for qualified translators and interpreters. Okay, this is the point I'd like to stress here. Look, because, given that English is important in our hemisphere, it doesn't mean that it is not important in other parts of the world. In large regions of Africa and Europe, French still matters a lot in diplomacy. So generally, the language combination pair is going to be French and English. Okay, it's important to keep this in mind. Not always in diplomacy is going to be only or mostly Spanish and English, but French also. So when French was the language of diplomacy, it was the authoritative medium for international treaties, agreements, and contracts. So many of the documents that are still standing or, in force among nations, they are in French because they were drafted and signed in French. So French English interpreters and translators are the one in order for this kind of documentation. So when we talk about diplomatic English, then this is probably out of reach for Spanish, English, Spanish pair in many parts of the world. Not everywhere, but in many regions, yes. So any problems that arose stem from ambiguities. You know? So French is a clear and direct language. Let a diplomatist remark that it is impossible to lie in French, because in French you have to be straightforward. That's what they claim among diplomats. The use of various languages in diplomacy for political and nationalistic reasons has led to the problem deciding which text in which language is the authoritative one. This is the same thing that happened with the Torrijos Carter case, right? That there was an English version first, then translated into Spanish, but then that was back translated to English and compared. And then since the American part had to, go over the English version, then that was the one that remained authoritative, not the Spanish version that trying to unshackle Panama from some responsibilities that were colonial, really. So the treaty was just like some band-aid to an hemorrhagic wound, I would call it, So this is along the lines of what happens in diplomacy. Sometimes this is defined in the treaty itself, and sometimes it is understood that the nation hosting a conference or acting as the repository of a treaty will also provide the authoritative text. Another approach is that if there is a difficulty caused by ambiguity, it should penalize the party responsible for drafting that part which created the problem. So there are specific rules, diplomatic rules, which are international agreements, and there is a doctrine and philosophy that runs along translation in diplomatic venues. So there was a scholarship, in offered here in Panama, that because of President Varela, that it stopped existing. That was offered by Taiwan. I remember that one, La Beca Diplomática. I don't know if you remember that one, but I do. And many politicians and members of political groups, the ones who wanted to study more, they went for that one during a period of time back in the 80s and 90s, La Beca Diplomática de Taiwan. And the emphasis was on these matters, that there is the doctrine and the philosophy and a body of knowledge behind how to translate or interpret among languages. And of course, with the added value that you would learn some Chinese language. If you ask me which one I think they focused on, based on a person who went there, I had the opportunity to talk to this professional. She explained to me that they studied Chinese Mandarin, and there was also other languages, of course, that were required. So La Beca Diplomática, that was a bit of a preparation for translation and interpretation work also, as well as the political aspects of diplomatic relations. Unfortunately, in the field of diplomacy, spectacular errors and gaffes of translators and interpreters frequently make the news rather than the routine daily accomplishment. So by this, we stress the unfairness of the media. Media is unfair because they're after their morbosity, they're after the morbosity of the confusion and the potential argument, that could arise out of something like that. So since it's the media is morose and all of these exist, it's very important not to make mistakes as to avoid scandal, right? Because there will be a lot of a scandal. So here we have in 1977 a part-time contract interpreter. By that, it's not someone hired permanently or staff member of President Jimmy Carter, late President Jimmy Carter. In Poland, committed a series of embarrassing errors. So at his airport arrival, he rendered Carter's comments on leaving the U.S. as abandoning the U.S., which is something else, right? It's not the same as departing. Say abandoning. That term just doesn't fit the bill. It's a false cognate, right? Eh, and means departing, not leaving to its own devices. Also, as Carter spoke to the Polish peoples about their desires, it came as their lusts, or in the sense of lujurias, or their passionate desires, or something like that. Pretty much, I think that's the meaning that it came across, and of course, that sparked a level of discomfort and also maybe humor. And that's the kind of mistake that politicians pay for in diplomacy. So historically, the United States Foreign Service has suffered from a lack of qualified translators and interpreters. So surprise, surprise here, surprise, surprise, because I think it's the same in our country, but at a higher level, at a much higher level, exponentially higher. And I think it has to do with um, not paying people well. Many of these economic advisors, when they make decisions about what salary to pay to people, they usually tend to assume that a translator should not be paid very well, because their job is something easy to do, and they don't care about image. They just don't care about communication. They don't care about the people receiving the message. There's zero accountability about the information, the importance of communicating the information the right way, being accurate, being natural. All of that tends to be overlooked, played down, ignored, and not reflected in terms of salary or wages. So they're not very willing to pay the ones who would responsibly do this work. Politicians pay the price in the long run. That's why they are disrespected, considered not serious, and that is why you should not worry much about what it is that their image reflects. Now they're accusing our presidents of being irresponsible, traitors, and all kinds of things, and it's okay. This is okay, and the reason is because they have their advisors. As I told you, we have a rank that they pay a lot of money to these people. They're the best paid ones, asesor de imagen. Each one of these nasty presidents that we're having in our democracies, including the United States, they all have these people, right? I don't recall exactly what the proper translation would be for asesor de imagen. Probably it's some image, some sort of image counselor. I don't remember exactly what the position is, but every and each one of them pay a lot of money to these people, right? It's like asesor de campaña. It's the same thing. For them, in order for them to win an election, all they do it based on perception and dark psychology. That's what they use in order to get to the presidency. And then they do it badly because they end up being betrayed by the people who are supposed to protect them. They go ahead and reveal their secrets in other circles, and then when the information comes out, then they say that it's on the translator to be blamed, because the translator said that they called mecha corta or leche condensada, or the orange man in the case of Donald Trump, and so forth. So don't protect any of these politicians, because they're all essentially dishonest, and the people around them are as dishonest as they are. So you, as a translator, you need to tell the truth. So if they're called X, that's what we need to say. This is very important. Look at this case here. Kissinger and Nixon. Okay, this is an example that's in the past. And the reason why I prefer to refer to the past, because I don't want to talk about what's going on right now. Because at present, we have the uglier examples of these cases, right? When Kissinger and Nixon traveled to China in the 70s, the translation, most of it in preparation for the visit, was done by Chinese from Taiwan. So, so you see, it's one thing, People's Republic of China, and it's another thing, um, uh, Taiwan. It's another country altogether. And their vocabulary and construction were obvious to the president host in the People's Republic of China, right? So I guess you know pretty much in which direction this is going. So natural leaders will frequently blame translators, interpreters for mistakes, when in fact they're using this as an excuse for their own oratorial excesses or slips of the tongue. When you listen, for example, to Donald Trump speaking at present, what is it that you listen to? I'd like to ask you to see if you watch some news, guys. I do respect you, but I'm going to be very honest and straightforward to you today, this Friday. Tell me, what do you think comes out of Donald Trump's mouth when you listen to the news? What comes out? First of all, he's not a professional politician. That's the first thing you know, right? He is disrespectful, and he can't hide his racism and sexism and all the other excesses. Then when something comes out in writing, they're trying to blame the interpreters. They're trying to blame the translators. They are the ones producing all of that. Okay. And they have people in their team who should be, mindful about that, not the translator or not the interpreter. So the officially translated written text of volatile speakers such as Libya's Muammar and Gaddafi, late one because he was killed by the U.S. During the Arab summer, La Primavera Árabe, right? You remember that, were softer and more reasonable than their extemporaneous remarks on the air, right? So since he respected the ones who wrote his speeches, but when he had to provide like his personal views, he went nuts, right? Gaddafi spoke of abolishing the non-aligned movement completely, but the transcripts which follow refer to his wish to surpass the movement. So avoiding a more aggressive phrasing of the words he spoke in the air. So he was restrained by the speeches. So if a president respects his political team, he would, of course, try to refrain from saying things that will get him in trouble. Okay, that's what I would like to stress here. And this is one of the most controversial aspects of translation that is worth talking about in this certificate program. In the US, an example here you see in the CIA's manual of the Contra guerrillas fighting the Sandinistas. The version picked up by journalists in the field spoke of the need to neutralizar Sandinista officials and to refer to selective use of violence. So you know what neutralize means. You've listened to Pete Hegseth if you've been watching news recently. He's been speaking about neutralizing people, it's killing them, okay? So when taken to task by member of Congress but for inciting unwarranted violence and assassination, the CIA argued that the Spanish word neutralizar did not mean the same thing as in English neutralize, which in intelligence jargon is kill. Nor they argued the uso selectivo de la fuerza, selective use of violence. So come on, this is a lot of hypocrisy, They're telling you on TV that they're killing people. So it's okay for them to kill people. They can kill people, but the rest of humanity, we should not kill anybody. So you see that the thing, this is immoral because there are laws, right? And everybody should abide by the laws, regardless of their status in government. So translators in the Congressional Research Service disagreed, arguing that the cognates were valid and the CIA was indeed telling the Contras to use violence and kill in violation of presidential orders. All right. my time is up, and I don't want to, move beyond this point because I have a lot of information here on cognates. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I guess. All right, ma'am. All right. And she's speaking right
I can hardly listen to you. Could you speak louder, please?
with the lawyer. So we're heading back home now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure do.
Okay. We want to thank Professor Cardenas for this day of workshop. We have learned so many new things, and we want to invite all the participants to register your attendance, to register in classroom, and that we comply with all the information that we need to. Remember, this week that is coming, we will be free, but we have assignments to comply, and we'll be back with our third model the following week. So please make sure to comply, because remember that this is important for your certification. So Marisol, do you have anything to say?
Nothing else to say. Thank you very much. You were very thorough. Thank you. Just to say, well, see you in a week. That would be about 9 days, I think, from now. So see you. I think it will be the 16th or something like that. 14th, 16th, yes. So see you on March the 16th. So God bless you all. Have a nice free week. Enjoy yourself and do your assignments. That will be it. Thank you.
So with that said, bye. See you in a week time. Take care. And thank you for participating. Somebody is asking for the attendance list.
Yes, it is me, Professor Veronica, because I'm working with the cell phone since today. I've had issues with the laptop connectivity, and I hadn't had the chance to fill in the form for attendance, but I've been here. Thank you.
I just share it. I just shared
Okay, much
the link again.
appreciated. Thanks. There you go. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, everyone. See you in a week time. Bye. Take care.
See you.